All right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another community conversation. Really excited to have a couple of special guests, Sujude and Tunde join us. This is a collaboration between the Siebel Center for Design, University of Illinois, and just the community abroad. So we're trying to have these community conversations to talk about design, to talk about social impact, and how higher ed and how kind of the neighborhood and the community can be brought together in an interesting way. So really excited for the students and the neighborhood and community members that have joined us so far. I'll go through a couple of overview slides and then we'll jump into some conversation with our special guests. Just like always, if you have commentary or questions that you'd like to put out there into the forum, feel free to use the Q&A to facilitate that. And myself and Bert, we will figure out a way to get the questions out there that we can have a dialogue and a discourse about it. So without any further ado, it's a quick agenda of what we'll do today. The actual lineup is right there for you. Quick intro of myself, one of the instructors for the DTX 210 class. My name is Brandon Middleton. A couple of contexts that I operate in is professional, family, and community. There's a couple photos that exemplify what I care about. And then I'll hand the popcorn over to Bert as well. I did one of the two, Bert, but I didn't.
So that's me on the left, and I am a lecturer at Siebel Center for Design. I teach most of our design thinking courses, including some that some people in the audience today are also taking. And I like good food and time with friends. So that's me.
Perfect. All right. And then just to underscore kind of the social impact focus of this course throughout the 16 weeks that we'll be operating, these are some of the logos and some of the operators of social impact and community orgs that we will have the pleasure to connect with over this semester. Some we've done and then some we've yet to do, but again, super focused on kind of the impact in the neighborhood and in the communities, as well as teaching kind of the fundamentals of design to students here who are new designers. All right, so without any further ado, I think we can pass the popcorn to two special guests, two friends who are great designers in their own right, have very interesting backgrounds that we'll dig into just a little bit, but Mama says ladies first. So Sujude, I'm coming to you for an introduction. Feel free to take 2 or 3 minutes to introduce yourself to everybody on the call here.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Sujude. I grew up in Hudson, Ohio, which is a small town outside of Akron, Ohio. And I had no idea anything about tech or VC. Was really good at math, and in that day, math meant you probably should be a doctor if you were good at it. So got a scholarship out to the West Coast to actually study physical chemistry and focus on the mathematical side of chemistry at UC Berkeley. Came out here, and that's when I got hit in the face with all Silicon Valley all at once. I was working at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab at the Summerjoy Group, making nanocatalysts for carbon dioxide conversion. Thought that was my way to impact, was green chemistry and helping reduce emissions through this project that was funded by Chevron. And then I was at Berkeley during the big data science wave where Jupyter notebooks were becoming super popular. And the professor who made it was trying to figure out ways to implement them into the physical sciences. So I hopped into that project and tried to make data science more accessible to undergrads who are trying to use technical skills in sociology, near Eastern studies, and then eventually in the physical sciences. And then after that, realized I like running teams. So at Berkeley Institute of Data Science, when I was a chemist, they just kept putting me in charge of other people in small teams. And I thought that meant I should be a product manager. So I started working as a PM at an ed tech startup, and then on the side consulting at two youth-focused health tech nonprofits, YTH and Hope Lab. And then through those experiences, realized the target demographic that I like helping the most are the high school undergrad age young person, which is probably because I'm an older sister and older cousin, and I have a lot of people that I'm always mentoring all the time. and realized like my passion project when I was an undergrad was building a center for Middle Eastern and North African students, first gen refugee students at Berkeley that reached over 450 people. And even today, I spend a lot of my time mentoring students abroad, specifically from Gaza or the West Bank, to help them get tech jobs overseas to bring income into their areas. VC wise, after PMing, I got in contact with David Kelly, heard of Stanford Design Masters, thought it would be a cool idea. And then I thought to myself, what's something Stanford grad students have a huge advantage for, and that's venture capital, just because of the name recognition. So my first position was an MBA position at K50 Ventures, which was focusing on solutions for the 99%. And I did most of my investing in consumer health and education, future of work, and then a few emerging markets investments in Nigeria, Ghana, and Egypt. And that was during 6 months, June 2020 to December 2020, when I got on a phone call with Lux Capital, and I've been there since. And Lux does more later stage startups all over the place, biotech, digital health, kind of the same areas, but also just more technically based. And they really focus in on manufacturing tech and stuff around there as well. And yeah, also venturing into emerging markets in crypto and Web3 stuff. And I think that's a good summary on me for now.
Cool. That's a long rap sheet, and to be so young, like you've got, I feel like, what was I doing when I was your age? So thanks so much, Sujude, for that introduction. And again, students, if you have questions about any side, whether it's the engineer and the chemist, or whether it's the business lady or the product manager, or it's the social impact side, feel free to cue those up as we start the conversation here. So I'll pivot over to another friend of mine, Tunde, Baba, as he's known. Like, feel free to take the same amount of time to introduce yourself to the folks. I see a football helmet back there. I love the background. So throw all that stuff into your introduction.
For sure. And I'm really glad to be here with all of you. I recognize the privilege that it is, because I'm just, a guy who's had a whole bunch of experiences, and I get to share them, and that's fun for me, and I hope it's useful for all of us. But I was born in the United States. I was born in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. My parents immigrated from Nigeria to come to the U.S. Actually, they went from Nigeria to the U.K. to go to school. Then they moved to the U.S., and I was born in the U.S. And most of growing up years was at home. My parents didn't trust American culture. They were very skeptical of the safety of U.S. cities, and so we spent a lot of time at home. But at home and in Nigerian culture, education is really big. And so I was essentially a nerd. I was really into computers and breaking things apart and building things. And but I also loved sports. I loved football. And so coming out of high school, I wanted to go to the best school where I could play sports and be an engineer. And so I went to Stanford University, which is the best school to do both of those things. And I had a little bit of a crisis at Stanford where it was really hard to give my full force effort in my schooling and play football at the same time. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I was an electrical engineer, major at Stanford, and played varsity football for 4 years. I still have to remind myself that I did that. Because the further and further away it gets, the less it feels like real. But I was really blessed and fortunate. I got to play professional football for about 4 years after college. I got accepted into the master's program at Stanford, but I didn't complete it. I went to play football. And after playing football, actually while playing football, the secret that no one tells you about football, maybe you know this, but you have a lot of free time. So you, especially in the off seasons, the day would be over at about 11 a.m. It's like, what do I do with myself? And a lot of people get in trouble at those points. But I actually started volunteering for a group in Chicago that was doing outreach to at-risk kids. And I just went and said, what do you guys need? They said, well, we need a website. And I had taken a class on web development in college. I said, hey, I could build it for you. Which was probably an overstatement of my capabilities, but I spent a lot of time working with them, designing and building their first website. And I started just doing that for people in my off-season time because it was something I could do from anywhere. And I had a lot of time. And so when the time came for me to stop playing football, I put my resume together, Stanford Dalieh, 4 years of football, about a dozen projects that I had done, web projects that I had done, and started looking for a temporary place to work because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. I thought about going back to school, thought about being a teacher, thought about all kinds of things, but ended up working at an ed tech startup for a really long time because the team was amazing and it was in sports still. It was called NCSA Sports, and they helped high school athletes get connected with college coaches. And it's a lot of education for families, and it was really a lot of fun. I stayed there for a long time, but had the entrepreneurial bug. I tried and failed. I started and failed at a startup myself with some friends. Was really frustrated by that process because I thought we had a really good idea and we had the makings of a good product, but we didn't have people buying it. It was a frustrating process, and I really wanted to know more about that. And that experience combined with the fact that my first experience to sort of the investing side of the house was at that edtech startup. We got acquired by an umbrella company. It's many layers, but there was an umbrella company that wanted to and still wants to do a big thing in youth and high school sports. So we got acquired, and all of a sudden there were 2 or 3 people whom we didn't know who came in and were like, this is how we're going to do things now. And that process kind of like opened my eyes to this whole other world. It's like, they don't know anything, but they're in here telling us what to do. Like, how does that happen? And started to realize that there's this whole other side. And that eventually led me to go to business school. I went to the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, really to learn. My goal originally was to create a startup, to launch a startup through the business school. It's like completely risk-free environment, mostly to start a company and just to roll with the goal long-term to move into the investing side and to help to be a more thoughtful investor, to be more thoughtful in coming into a company and do business development. Something that I realized and learned during the time, I had some really great advice, some great mentors, and they knew my story. And essentially, midway through my business school experience, someone came up to me and said, you should be an investor right now. I was like, but I'm not sure if I'm ready. I don't know if I know enough. And they're like, what are you talking about? You don't need to add things to your resume. You should just go practice being an investor, go do it, which was really great advice. And so I shifted gears, and really the things that I was interested in and still are interested in was around, I think broadly speaking, I would say community health, or what now the popular term for it nowadays is the social determinants of health. And so when you think about your health and all the things that factor into your health, only part of it, maybe like a fifth of it, is actually your healthcare or healthcare access. Your access to finances, your access to food, access to healthy living spaces, healthy relationships, all of these things factor into the complete and total health of a person. And so I was really passionate, and I'm really passionate about how do we stay healthy without having to go to the hospital, without having to jump into the healthcare system. What I came to find out in the course of a couple of years is that that's actually a big focus of the healthcare system today, is how to keep people healthy without needing to access the hospital or a doctor per se. And so shortcutting a few things in my story, but I ended up interning for some VC shops and making a lot of mistakes early on, but landed here at Sandbox Industries, where I invest across the spectrum of healthcare, really anything in healthcare, healthcare services, enterprise technology that can be used in a healthcare context. And I think the thing that really drives me is just solutions. I'm inclined towards solutions that are going to have a tangible impact on our day-to-day lives. There's a lot of things in healthcare that feel like fluff and that are very complex and complicated. And there's a lot of bad things you could say about the United States healthcare system, but there are a lot of really amazing people working to do good things and to bring real change. And so I get to play a very small piece in that right now.
Yeah, we actually spoke a little bit about how it was different in other countries, the healthcare systems and the focus on education, and just systematically how leaving the United States could present you some really, really different experiences as it pertained to some of these kind of these big broader issues that affect most of the human population. So a nice little tie to that thread there. And again, a prompt to the students and the community members. If you've got questions, feel free to queue them up in the chat. But until then, I'm going to come back to you, Sujude, and ask a question about, maybe this is a little off the cuff, but you both mentioned like the power of capital and like money, and how important it is to, you know, push forward some of the social impact type of passions that you might have. And you both study very technical things, but you kind of in a roundabout way made your way over to the money side. As a kind of a female technical kind of investor type, like you are certainly not in the mainstream in the spaces and the places that you're in. So being the first and only, sometimes just give us a little bit of a look behind the curtains of how you've managed to deal with it, how you've managed maybe to lean into design principles and design thinking and stuff that you learn on the design side in order to add value and make it make sense for people that are in the room.
Yeah, that's a long question. So for the first part, I think being a woman in the space, especially like a younger woman too, there's just more eyes on you. And I think I realized that very quickly. Like my cohort at K50 was a few MBAs and me, and I just looked so much different than them. So that's why people kind of, in the beginning, cared either a lot less what I said or a lot more. It wasn't really like an even tone to my work and showing my work off comparably to others. And then, yeah, I think you have to get, I think the one thing I super appreciate about design is like all the user research and ethnography and understanding different cultures. And I think the reason I am very happy I went from Ohio to Berkeley was just like the mass amount of diversity that I saw at Berkeley within the Middle Eastern community, with different people from around the world, and kind of asking them a bunch of questions as like someone who didn't understand a bunch of cultures at that point, to see why it made a lot more impact being in this space where no one really looks like me, and being in a position where people are trying to push you to the forefront because of how you look. Like a year ago, last year, January, they wanted to put me in this article for young venture capitalists. And all I could think was like, I haven't really done anything yet. Like, I don't want to be in this. And then my firm too just had no idea how young I was. So they're like, why do they even want Sujude in this? And then once they put me in it, they also put my face in the front. And then I thought to myself, why did they put my face in the front? And it's like, oh, because ethnically ambiguous, look different from everyone else on this list. And that was kind of like a big, somewhat like big realization moment, is like, oh, I could build a big brand here if I decide to continue forward in this investment world. And then I think also just having a small circle and having such a good base and support system here keeps me grounded in understanding like what's like reality and what's like this brand and marketing tactic I'm putting on. And then I kind of forget the last half of your question.
That was it was about like kind of just the ways that design might have been helpful, and just more of just like how has it felt to kind of be in your skin and be able to authentically operate, or maybe you have to put a little bit of a facade on because you're not part of kind of the mainstream of what kind of normal looks like in the spaces that you walk in.
Yeah, I also don't think I put on a facade, I think, in the investment world. I also think I put on a facade in the design world, because I think design is becoming increasingly more this one persona, which I don't think is the honest persona. So I think within the design world, I'm perceived in a certain way, and that certain way is very different than how I'm perceived in a tech company when I go help and operate, or at an investment firm when I support investments. I think honestly, just the variety of experiences I had, like being a chemist, all that kind of stuff, has given me just a really strong sense of self. And I think if I didn't have that, I'd be running down the rabbit hole of trying to like not being authentic in any way and not being authentic in my personal life and creating like real relationships with people in the industry too. I don't think I have a good answer. What helped you overcome that feeling of being the only female? Honestly, being friends with the only females at other firms. I think like the moment you're in a firm and you feel like no one else looks like you try to find the other people that look like you at other firms and like who have similar backgrounds, whether it's like being Midwest or having like a refugee family or being from the Middle East, that kind of stuff. Like that's a very big, like once you meet someone like that and you relate on that, we keep in touch forever just because we're such a small minority. But
yeah, I think making connections and like appreciating the different contexts that you might share. Like we have talked about how the folks who are on this call who are students, like you come from all different majors, you're freshman all the way to senior, you come from all the different schools, but that diversity is something that will make our combined ideas as a class a lot more valuable than if we had groupthink or if we were all like within the silo of engineering or all within the silo of business. So I think it's useful to be able to recognize kind of difference and to be able to come humbly, to folks that are culturally or kind of functionally different than you, and to be able to build those bridges, because without that, we won't be able to solve some of the bigger challenges that kind of humans all across the world faces. So yeah, even with you and Tunde, I hear that you're both kind of born in Ohio. Tunde, I'll come over to you and ask, like, in the earlier days, did you ever see yourself as like a designer, or did you like, what part did imagination and kind of ideation play in your formative years as you were coming up before university?
I don't know if I've ever thought about it just like that. I'd say that at the core and my formative years, like for lack of a better word, like there were things that I had certain tastes, right? I had things that like perspectives, things that I liked the way that they were framed visually, things that I liked to experience, like experiences like that, like, and like I think I valued what I liked, if you will. And so when you think about like when you get into a place where you have to exercise some creativity, and I think Sujude mentioned something like, having a sense of self, right? Like being able to know like this is the perspective that I have, or the aesthetic that I have, or what I like to see, the experiences that I want to craft and see happen, and that those are important, and that what I'm bringing is like, even if it's not like explicitly unique, like because it's for me, like it's good, right? And just being okay with that and submitting that to other people, I think like I think that's probably what started my path in design in that sense. But I never thought of myself as a designer. Even when I was building projects for people, even like I didn't think like, oh, I'm a designer. That label didn't really, I never thought about myself like that.
Yeah. To articulate and to democratize design so that people coming into the field can actually see themselves as not having to achieve anything in order to call themselves a designer, but to, think of themselves as basically a junior designer on a journey towards like perfecting different skills that we all have in our tool belt over time. That's something that was kind of a revelation to me as well, because like, I studied engineering like y'all, and never until much later kind of even thought of myself as being qualified to call myself that. But yeah, and in order to diversify the field here and to make it more accessible, I think this is something that we're going to continually have to remind ourselves to do over time. So I saw another football player with a chat question in. Talon, you want to ask it on the mic here, or do you want to just have us read it?
Yeah, I can ask him on the mic. So just like, obviously both of you are very successful at what you do now. So what advice would you give someone kind of like in the end of their college career before they going to the world outside of school, because obviously it's a lot different. Once you leave school, you don't really have that, you know, as the same support system or, you know, like community that you have.
So yeah, maybe Sujude, you want to start us off like advice to your younger self right before you left undergrad.
Well, I think the biggest learning I realized once me and my friends left undergrad is a lot of people go through like a depression, get really sad. Like it is a big change, and to not like minimize that. And then at that point, to put less weight on everything you're doing. Like you're just live a good life. And if that means like getting a new job, working for another job, and don't compare yourself to others at that stage. Because I think like your life is so long and people really dictate how the rest of your life is going to be based off that first job at 22. And it's really not that. Like I substitute taught for 6 months, just trying to figure out where I should be in this world before I went into product after, I don't know, like, and then a lot of my friends have already done 2-3 career switches and they're only 4 years out of undergrad. So it's nothing is forever. And yeah, you're still iterating. Like after college, it's not like, oh, this is the final product. Like you're still learning and iterating. It's kind of it's a moving endpoint.
Yeah, and I think I come to Tunde for the same question, and maybe you could do it like double, like when you're getting out of undergrad and when you like were getting out of business school.
Yeah, and I think something that, and I heard this from Sujude and what she said, but I think a right perspective is really important. I think, you know, there is this sort of, sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's overt, but there's this pressure, like, you know, your undergrad, like in college, like these are supposed to be like the best days of your life. Like you're young, you got like, I think anyone who would say like that's the peak of your days and influence is the time when you're in college and undergrad, but it's a gross miscalculation, right? Like everyone, and hear me out, this might sound strange, but when you think about the people whom are yielding great influence on our world and our experiences every day, most of them are over 50 years old. Most of them are over 60 years old, and they didn't begin there, right? And so give yourself some grace and some time, right? But if you, in terms of a practical step, something that I would highly recommend, I know the people that you're interacting with in college, you don't know where they'll be years from now, and just to be like good, like get to know people and be good to them, because you know maybe it's not like you're networking and you're trying to like gain favor for the future, but it's like if you get to know a lot of people, one of the things I do wish I had done more when I was at school was get to know people outside of my like lane. So I was an athlete. I spent a lot of time in the athletic building. I hang out with a lot of athletes, and I felt like I should have spent more time with everyone there. And I knew a lot of people, but I didn't really know them. And I wish I got to know more people outside of like my lane and just like be cool with them, because a lot of those people, they're doing like big things right now. And not that I want to like know them because they're doing big things, but like the people that I've stayed in touch with, they're doing awesome things. And when we reconnect, like it's all good because we have that pre-existing relationship. So I would just build relationships outside of your lane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the last 6 months of my undergrad, I was freaking out and I didn't really have social media. So I built an Instagram and it was really late comparably to others. And I'm so happy I did it because now I get to keep up with my friends pretty passively and feel like I have those connections. But yeah, and if you don't have social media, it's also always a good choice about that usage.
Cool.
Thank you.
Talon, thank you for that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe we'll shift over. And again, this is a prompt to keep, throwing questions into the chat as you have them, and we'll make sure to cover them. But, another thing that I'm curious about, just to like humanize y'all both a little bit further, like outside of kind of work and outside of being designers, like what are some of the things that you do in order to kind of maintain balance, to keep yourself laughing and smiling? What are the things that are meaningful to kind of supplement the design and the tech and the investing and all that? So I'll come back to you, Sujude, and then Tunde, same question.
I like to throw parties. I know that's like a weird answer, but I like to do like dinner parties or Halloween parties or random parties in flower shops. I think my friends that aren't in the Bay Area always book out the weekend of my birthday because they know I'll throw something fun here and they should probably be here for it. So that's like probably my go-to stress release is like putting way too much money into an event that my friends and family can come to.
Love it. Love it. I feel like I've not gone to a Sujude party yet.
It's because of COVID. Everyone keeps saying that. But after COVID, we'll throw something nice.
Beautiful. What about you, Tunde?
Well, I have the great fortune and blessing of being father and a husband. And so I have 3 children, ages 8, 6, and 2, whom I don't know if you can tell, but are making a tremendous amount of noise in the other room. I got all this noise canceling stuff set up here. But we're also expecting another baby in March. So we'll have 4 children. And so that is a lot of what I do in my free time is spending time with them. But my wife and I also, our faith is very important to us. And so we actually lead a church out of our home. And so we end up spending a lot of time counseling and mentoring and talking to folks from all walks of life and young people. So yeah, our lives are very full. We just moved into a new house. So like, I don't really have free time. And so maybe going back, I'm gonna sound super old now, but going back to the question Thailand had asked, when I was out of college, actually when I was playing football and I was a free agent in football, which is a fancy word for I was unemployed, waiting for someone to call me. But I remember someone telling me, someone who was a former athlete, and he said, you should really soak up this season of your life because, you're going to be so busy in the future. You're not going to know what to do with yourself. And I remember sort of blowing him off at the time, like, whatever, but now it's like, yeah, so in college now, you've got lots of time, relatively speaking. The longer you live life, the more people, responsibilities, things come in. And those are good things. And that's a mosaic that makes up a wonderful and healthy life. But those things take your time. So at the end of school now, man, use the time you got. Be intentional about what you do, what you spend your time with.
Yeah, that's big facts. And I think about the same thing. Like, what in the heck was I doing when I was not married and didn't have any children? Like, I was maybe not the best steward of the time and the resources that I had back then. But I mean, the world was so different too. Thinking about what the future of education will look like when, Tunde, your 8-year-old is 18 a decade from now, or when your new baby is, about to go off from high school. I'm expecting things to look a lot different, and design is going to be a lot of how that gets formed and how that gets shaped. So maybe that's a good segue or tee up to kind of the futurism question. Like, Sujude, if I were to come to you and ask you what kinds of things are you most excited about designers being able to influence, and experiences that are maybe right on the cusp that we're just getting started with? Lots to talk about. What are a couple of that you're really jazzed up about right now?
Well, I think you just touched on one, kids in 10 years going to high school. I think that whole experience is going to be changed. I think it already is changing, and yeah, or a hybrid model, the idea of people coming in person and remote at the same time, and how to make community within that kind of framework. And if people live on their laptops, is that really the metaverse, or what makes a virtual life? Should we have virtual lives? I think futurism in that sense. And then I think in the healthcare space, I think the remote patient monitoring and everything at home, like the big fundraising of at-home phlebotomists and now at-home cardiology care and all this kind of stuff, where basically doctors come to you, like no more hospitals. That's an interesting future to think through. And I think in the family space too, I think there's a big epidemic of, I think the family has kind of degraded in America, and the family structure and the ability to have children in a nice and effective fashion, and then build that kind of, like, that's kind of collapsed in the sense of any urban city. Like, everyone has this baby deficit, and like economists are saying like American economy is going to keep going down because we're not having babies. So like in like the financial capitalist sense, it's an issue, and then in like the moral, I want to start a family sense, it's an issue. So I think that will be interesting in the future as well.
Yeah, Tunde, same question over to you. Just thoughts about future exciting. I'm jazzed up about these things that are coming down the line.
Yeah, I think Sujude and I are aligned in a lot of ways in sort of the things we're excited about in the future. But something, an interesting data point, and something that consumes a lot of thought in the healthcare world right now, is that 10 years from now, there will be as many 80-year-olds as 16-year-olds in this country. Like, think about it. As many like old people as there are young people. It's never happened in the history of I think the civilized world before. And so what does that do to family structures? What does that do to our institutions, which never really anticipated people living that long? What does that do to healthcare and paying for people with chronic conditions over a long time? And the big thing, and Sujude hit it, is like the movement towards home health, changing the site of where people get care. That is a huge deal. And there are, like, when you think about that experience, the design of that experience is something that like, it needs desperately people with insight and empathy, in addition to an economic lens. And so a lot of investment and activity is happening there right now for things like, I mean, everyone on this call is relatively young, but think about your parents. And think about, there are people now crafting the experience that your parents will have as you care for them in their old age. Like, it's being built right now. Like, that's kind of a mind-boggling thing to think about.
Yeah. And just for Sujude and Tunde's context, if you wouldn't mind, put your major into the chat to give them a sense of, like, as we talk about futurism, there's so much contribution, that I see: electrical engineering and stats and computer science and political science and graphic design. Like, all of these things that you all are putting into the chat will potentially influence your own life, your parents' life, brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles. And yeah, to think as designer is also to think as a kind of bridge builder and a conduit, from your field of expertise as a bridge to another one. So part of the work that we're also focusing on as designers is to kind of build community, like we're doing on calls like this, to talk about what kinds of coalitions might need to exist in order for us to continue to thrive. So yeah, I appreciate those trends that you're excited about. And I didn't hear any like Web3 or crypto or NFT in there, but
I referenced the metaverse. I've never been a video game person, let alone someone who wants to live a virtual life. So I think that's why I'm the biggest naysayer right now.
Yeah, I would, I think, sorry, it's really crazy over here. The one thing that we are, like, it's easy when you're thinking about being a futurist to negate or not put at the center the fact that we are all still human, and that there are these basic human needs that we all have. And I think that there is a space for all of that tech, but I think the real innovative advancements will be about actually connecting people to people. I think when you think about just the pandemic in the past 2 years, we've adapted virtually because we've had to, but like, when you think about telemedicine, for instance, peaked in the summer of 2020, it's come far down again, and it's leveled off. It's still higher than it was before. People are using it more than they were before. But the thing that we discovered, especially amongst older individuals, is that going to see someone in person for their health was a part of their social life. not just their physical health. And so people like desire and crave connection with other people. And I am very skeptical that the metaverse will be able to replicate that in a meaningful way. There may be some cool experiences there to be had, but with the technology that exists today, I don't believe that it's going to be as dramatic as we make it out to be. Maybe there's more to come, more interfaces to the human brain that can stimulate things. Who knows? But as of right now, I'm bearish on the metaverse.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you. That's to Sujude's point in the beginning of like marketing and like the branding of something versus kind of the other side of actuality and what you feel. So I think there's much hype right there in that space right now, and we'll have to just wait and see what it turns into. The next question that I had in my little list was about kind of inspiration and things that you've kind of drawn motivation from in the past. So this could be classes, this could be books or podcasts or folks that you follow. So Jude, I want to come to you, and this could be like design related. This could be some of it you're investing in business and technical as well. But I know as designers, a lot of us have to have good inputs in order to kind of get ourselves in the right mindset and flow to produce some of our best work. So talk to us a little bit about inspiration and motivation.
Yeah. I like political commentary. Like Daily Show with Jon Stewart was like my first way in and like comedy that way. So I think that actually, and like listening to podcasts that are funny, honestly sparks a lot of ideas in my head on what to create next or where to think next. And then also like staying in touch with the news, but listening to like people in Indonesia talk about the news of America and like England about America and then Americans about America is like so interesting to me. And that's like usually where I consume the most content, is how how I perceive myself and how others perceive me is like always that like dichotomy that I'm trying to like understand. My parents came in the 90s and like Tunde, like they were very skeptical of the United States and like kept me at home. So I feel like always kind of having that like, I don't know if I'm American really. And that kind of thing is a lot of inspiration.
I want to come to Tunde with that same question and then come back to each of you to double click into kind of Middle Eastern, like your heritage and like what it, has meant to grow up, in America, but in like a household that also has different roots. So first question though, Tunde, I'll come to you for inspiration, then we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, I think for inspiration, I think I do come back to that like sense of self. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not in an industry where I need a lot of kinesthetic creativity as much. Like I'm not like physically designing things as much. But there's for lack of a better word, like when you see something, you experience something and you like it, right? And like understanding why I like that or why like that makes sense to me, like valuing my own tastes, I think is a part of, I feel like that's a big inspiration factor to me, because I think we're saturated with messages and content that it's really easy to feel like you're supposed to feel a certain way or like a certain thing or fall into a certain place. And I'm not trying to like be in a soapbox about anything in particular, but just like when I like something and I feel like I want to make sure I understand why I like it and not just because people do, I think the other thing that I would say to that I think is really inspiring, and I would encourage everyone to do it, is to return to long form reading. Whether it's a book, magazine, Kindle, whatever, probably not an iPad or a phone, but like on an actual like reading things long form, it does something to your brain that I think is really magical. So I would encourage that as a inspiration tool.
Yeah. Some people are like, what is that? Yeah. and to your point about like knowing what you like and sometimes having to like search and discover for, things you like. Um, growing up in Chicago, coming to the West Coast, like sushi was not a thing necessarily in Chicago. Like my parents, just the idea of that was like gross. Now it's one of the things that I love and enjoy the most. Um, a recent one for this last year, who knew that Brandon Middleton would like enjoy K-dramas on Netflix? Like my wife started watching them and now we can't stop. Like it's if you take some chances and roll the dice on a few things, you literally find things that you like that maybe the next person that looks just like you and comes from a very similar background as you would not like at all. But my family bonds on those two crazy things now, sushi and K-dramas on a regular basis. So
Have you seen Singles Inferno, Korean dating shows?
it's in my queue. I say that. So I'll come back to you, Sujude, with like give us some double click into kind of Middle Eastern heritage and like the way that you were brought up and things that you come to appreciate about your culture that might not be so apparent to folks on the outside because they weren't in your house growing up. Like, what are some things that are distinct, make you smile, make you double click and think twice about like, why do we do it like that? But just parts of how you came up.
Yeah. I spent a lot of summers growing up going back to Jordan. So the school year would be in the Midwest and summers in the Middle East, which were kind of an interesting lifestyle. But I think how Arabs kind of they greet everyone like their family, and then they're very blunt when they talk and very direct communicators, which I didn't realize was going to be one of my superpowers later in life, was being a direct communicator and saying things quite plainly. And then other parts of the culture, I think I think both like in Ohio and in the Middle East, like people are much friendlier and much more colloquial with their like connections and relationship building. Whereas when I came to Silicon Valley, it was very much more professional. Like you were friends with someone if they gave you something that you needed, it was very transactional. So I think the biggest thing I carry from my upbringing is trying to make non-transactional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. Yeah, being Middle Eastern in the United States is a trip. Like you go to Detroit and everyone looks and acts like me. Half the town is Arab, so it's like definitely different. And then when I come to, and then different Arab populations focus on different things. Like at Berkeley, most of the Arabs there are either Palestinians or Gulf Arabs, and then at Stanford, most of the Arabs are Egyptians or North African, and you just like all the different micro communities and knowing all the differences in those cultures really like in the designer lens like really brings to light how just like one town over can be an entirely different way of acting, and you really have to be specific when doing a demography of someone and understanding their motivations and that kind of stuff. Because even like within the Palestinian community, if someone's from a village like a little further away from my parents' two villages, then they're gonna say a word differently. They're gonna eat a different dish. I think that was the biggest takeaway too.
Yeah, that's super cool. And part of kind of just being human and open to learning new things about new people is kind of the joy of coming into some of these insights. And again, if you can approach things humbly and kind of with the open mind, you can find a lot of joy there. So I appreciate you kind of giving us a couple minutes, of your background and upbringing. And I see some comments in the chat coming through here as well.
A lot of my friends are in Al Rawabi School for Girls. Like they play the girls. Everyone there is like 25. So
yeah, it's a small world. And I'll come over to you, Tunde. I know Nigerian background. There's a lot of things Nigerians are known for. Also a very kind of disparate and diverse, funny group of people. So give us a couple minutes on kind of your ethnic heritage.
I think growing up first generation and sort of like having that very home-centered lifestyle in the formative years, I think what it did is it allowed me to be really adept at being cool with myself in a variety of different environments, like because we lived in Texas during elementary school, and so like I didn't know any other Nigerian anybody in Texas, and so in my school for sure. But I was so like, and this is part of Nigerian culture, I was so cool that like I'm Nigerian, and that's cool. That's a good thing, right? And so they just like other people, they just don't know. And that is a very Nigerian thing. And I apologize if you've faced the wrong end of being with some Nigerian folks and they think they're the greatest people in the world. But I think something that growing up in Nigerian culture allowed me, I felt very comfortable with my cultural identity. And I know not everybody has that to a degree. And so, but that was really powerful for me in going into a variety of different environments because for me personally, I wasn't really looking for external validation. And when faced with, the opposite, my internal mindset was just like, oh, well, they're wrong. They don't understand. They don't know. But I think something that, and this will be a gross overgeneralization, so I apologize ahead of time, but something that I've noticed with regards to like Western culture and Eastern culture, and Eastern, I would lump West African culture into Eastern culture, right? Is this sort of like spectrum of like collectivism versus individuality. And when you're in some of the more Eastern cultures, right, you recognize that you're a part of a whole, you're a part of a family, you're a part of something bigger and greater, right? You have, relatives, and like you're a part of a big pot. In Western culture, it's very much more individualistic. It's much more like, me-centered, right? It's allowed for tremendous progress in Western nations in the past, 100 years plus. I know that's a loaded and complex statement, but it's part of the reason why America is America. But I think something that the cultural background that I have in the midst of this culture, American culture, has done is it's almost like, and Sujude has probably experienced this too from the things that she said, it's almost like when you're able to like make that bridge and bring your own cultural identity effectively into where we are, it's almost like a superpower. Like I'll have people tell me like, you're like, we love having you on the team because like you just like are able to say the things that are hard to say, or you're able to say the things that are like that people don't, it's weird. I'm sorry if I'm conflating a few things, but like when you grow up in a culture where you're a part of a family and people say stuff and they're loud and they let you know how they feel, and then you come into a place where people are much more conscious and you're able to tell people things directly without like offending them, or like it's you get the best of both, I guess.
Yeah, and it's so funny. We literally just talked about collectivism and like individualism like on Tuesday, and some of the themes about being able to say something that might not be agreed with, but to hear it and to not take offense. Very key elements to consider, and as designers, like tools that you need to have when you're getting ready to interface across difference in a lot of different ways. So Jude, I saw your head nodding. I'm not sure if you had an extra take that you were gonna.
Thank you. Yeah, you summarized it really well. But I agree with everything Tunde said.
Cool.
If you don't mind, I had a question.
Yep, go for it.
So I think it was something you said was really important, like being like both of you, being comfortable with like your identity. And that's just like, I feel like that's something that for a while I lacked in certain degrees. Like I didn't look for external validation when it came to my goals, but when it came to like who I was just on a day-to-day basis, I used to when I was growing up. So like, this is just a question for either one of you, or both of you. What do you think, like in your upbringing specifically, was like a key factor in helping you both develop that like strength and understanding who you are, and it's okay that you're different?
I can go first, but I can also go last. But My dad gives zero fucks. Like my dad is like this very short, very Arab fat guy with like a goatee, and he'd wear like a cowboy hat around the middle of Ohio. When it would start to snow, he would put a scarf around his bald head like a hijab, and he just like always gave zero fucks. And I think once people know me and then they meet my dad, they're like, oh, everything makes so much more sense, how she has all this confidence in all these different spaces. And no one understands my dad. His accent is way too thick, yet he acts like other people are in the wrong when they don't understand him. Like you're the one who doesn't get me. I'm not the one who's not saying proper English. Like that is, I think, a big reason why I am the way I am. And then I'm also a middle child. I have two sisters, and I think kind of when you're like a kind of in a pack and you like your identity becomes so clear, because my older sister was athletic one, she was a D1 soccer person. Like I was always slow, and I like knew myself, and I was so comfortable with being like a slow athlete, because it's like, yeah, that's her thing, but I'm good at these things, and my little sister is much better at all these things too. So it's, I don't know, I think that my family definitely, the confidence and like kind of just like always being compared, I know that like causes a lot of not confidence in a lot of people, but I think my middle child syndrome like really made me have a good sense of self, including, yeah, and my dad.
Tunde, what about you and all the middle child folks?
Middle children unite, middle children stand up. Yeah, I think I'd say that when I think about the way that my parents raised us, the cultural experiences we had in our home here, the things that we talked about, the things that were important, like the clearest thing I can think of is that like we had a deep sense. I would never have been able to say this when I was growing up, like, and put a pin on it, but I had a deep sense of my own intrinsic value, right? Like, and that's something like that I think is really powerful. It's a deep, almost spiritual understanding that someone can have. Like regardless of what someone is saying or thinking about me, like I understand, like, man, I've got value, like my opinion, my presence, my interests, right? They have value. And a lot of that was reinforced by my parents. It was reinforced by, in faith contexts, but it's just like, it's something that, like, looking back, like it underpinned everything. It's like, and I see it even a little bit like with, when you talk about like Sujude's dad, like people would criticize, and it's like, no, like you don't understand, right? As opposed to taking the criticism of the world and internalizing and saying, well, there must be something wrong with me, or I'm not supposed to be here, or I don't fit here because of what other people are saying. It's like flipping that and really recognizing like that you matter, right? And that, like, regardless of whatever else is going on. And that was something, it's still something I still think about, especially when, entering into places where it feels like, I don't fit, or where I feel like, I don't know what I'm talking about, which is a lot of the time, right? And I have to like work to build competency. And so like, it's sort of like a healthy foundation to do anything risky, because I'm not worried if failure doesn't mean that I'm somehow bad necessarily, I'm somehow like less than or less worthy because I messed up in something. It's rather just like, it didn't work out, and I might be disappointed, but I'm going to try again, and I'm going to do it again. Like, it was really helpful being an athlete to have that mindset, for sure. And it's definitely helpful, I would say, as a designer, to do that, because, for those of you who have like physical designs or tangible things that you designed, like going back to the things that you made like years ago and how you kind of feel about them, it's like, oh, that was so bad, or like, I can't believe I did that, right? And there's this tendency to want to like hate on yourself because of something that you did in the past, when actually, like, you definitely don't have to do that, right? So yeah, self-worth, your intrinsic value as a human being, as an underpinning for any endeavor that you take.
Yeah. And I see Arvin put a question in here. And before you ask it, Arvin, I want to riff on what Tunde just mentioned. back in 2000, I think it was like 2008, when Tunde was a web developer designer. This man was actually the person who put together the first website that I ever had for a mobile game that I created. We were like having a laugh about how he was a junior
So
designer.
bad. It was so bad. I don't want to tell people. I don't want them to go like look on the Wayback Machine and try to find it. I'd like,
Yeah, we will not say the name of said app or website or anything, but I mean, you should give yourself credit and kudos for throwing that airplane off the cliff in the first place. Like, who cares if it flies a long way or if it falls? 99% of the folks never even got to the point to throw the prototype off in the first place. So say all that to say, try it, give yourself grace, do it. And with that, Arvin, I see you had a question in there, so go ahead and come off mute.
Hey, Sujude and Tunde. My name's Arvin. I'm a junior at UIUC. And one of the questions I've asked, and especially like growing up in the Bay Area, and coming here for like CS, was like when I was growing up, and we used to go down to Menlo Park, and I forget there was a drive that's really famous for like venture capital.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm like Sand Hill Road. Like when we typically saw the profile, we like not to overgeneralize or anything, but we saw rich white people from Stanford University. That's who we saw when we drove down Sand Hill Road, and like I was wondering how people like yourselves kind of open the door for like people from unconventional backgrounds.
I do a lot of mentoring, and I do a lot of, if someone reaches out to me and they want a fresh take on VC, I almost always answer. And then I also connect them to people. I also just don't think VC, I'm still kind of wavering if VC is a good place for new professionals to land. I think it's a pretty risky field even when you're in it. A lot of funds don't recuperate, a lot of funds don't go forward. So like I always see needing a backup career if you're in VC, which sounds weird, but like having other skills, but opening the door for other people. I think when we do hiring, I definitely check for different experiences that show key skills that make VC, like community building, marketing, that kind of branding, people who've built communities in places you can't really see community. And then I think also just discrediting a lot of backgrounds now. Like if someone is working at their dad's company, I think like 10 years ago, that would be like, oh, cool, VP at this company. But then you dig in and it's like, oh, okay, a lot of nepotism in this person's background. It's like kind of now it's like more of a negative. So you can push the people who might not have that much of a stacked resume to the forefront. I don't know. That's probably not a good answer to that.
I liked it. I'll pass the rock over to Tunde as well. I'm sure you got a couple of thoughts here.
Yeah, I would say that when you think about like those driving down Sand Hill Road and seeing the folks, like the demographic makeup, it's like, why does it look like that? And there's lots of different reasons, but I think a big one is that when a lot of those guys have been in positions where, whether it's through nepotism, whether it's through people that they know, whether it's through whatever the case may be, they're able to like jump into places and to make mistakes that are affordable.
Yeah.
Right. Like if someone gets into that position and like doesn't understand how to do something, it's not a career ending move. Right. It's not like the penalty for that might be like a slap on the wrist, or it might be like, we're bringing someone along. It's essentially like VC is supposed to be an apprentice business where someone is like shepherding you along and helping you to learn what you're supposed to learn. Depending on the firm, VCs are actually really bad at that, I would say, most of the time. But so the way that I help people to open the door, if you will, is that like I want to be a person that someone can come to and like not be perfect. Like I want to do this, but I don't know how. okay, I'm not evaluating you. I'm not like judging you, like, okay, like didn't know how to do XYZ. And so the next time this role's open, like, oh, I can't try, like, you can come on and talk to me and like be imperfect and like let's work on what it might look like. I have mentors like that in my own life. And those are the most valuable professional relationships I have. I can
Yeah.
go to someone who's in the same space and say, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know what this is supposed to be. Like, what do you think? Right. So I want to be that person for others.
Yeah, that's a great, great commentary. And again, the thread from last week, I don't remember if y'all picked up this bar from DeVaris where he said the mentors that he had while he was studying as an undergrad in those electrical engineering labs, he said failure without judgment produced kind of this confidence and this ability to try new things that has like served him very well in his career now. So like the idea that you could be a full human being and not judge anybody and not, you know, be punitive towards somebody that's making a mistake as a way to cultivate kind of a confidence and a foundation in them to, you know, be successful in the future. I love kind of that conversation, and thank you for that question. I think that was a great one.
No, I definitely like appreciate the responses.
Yeah. Cool. So I see we're like nearing kind of the very end of our time. Just got a few more minutes left. So what I wanted to do is maybe, Sujude, if you wanted to pop in with a couple of minutes of like, if y'all take nothing away from this except for these couple of things, I want to leave you with this, and then same for Tunde, and then we'll start to move through like 2 more slides and then wrap up here.
I want Tunde to go first.
Oh, perfect.
You take nothing away from today. I would encourage you all, like whatever path you're going down. And I really loved like seeing all the majors and like all the different things out there. But like whatever path you go down, again, I feel like a lot of the questions, they've been related. Like you of course have to take great risks to do something that's worthwhile. Want those risks to be affordable, you know, but like if you are able to extend yourself to take those risks, to be vulnerable and empathetic in your design work, in your career moves, and to recognize that like the results of those things are not indicative of like your essential value. Like you can do a lot of different stuff, right? And it like, and again, just to remember, like the timeline is really relatively, it's long. I mean, life is short, but the timeline is relatively long. You know, I read a stat the other day that most people who are successfully starting companies and launching things, like they're in their 40s, right? The narrative of like, you know, you're young and you got to do everything while you're young, you got to like, that's your time, is actually like not true for the majority of people on planet Earth. Most people, they progress in their lives in wisdom and in relationships and in their careers, and end up making the most impact in their later years, right? Maybe that doesn't have to be the case for you. Maybe you're sitting on something amazing and you want to do it right now. More power to you. But just to remember that whatever you're doing, success or failure, right? It doesn't change like your essential value.
I love that. Thank you, Tunde and Sujude. I'm going to come to you for
I
the.
regret that decision. That's hard to follow up. I think life is long. What you choose to do now, you can change your mind in the future. Yeah, and that life is not just about work, and to make sure you have a great family life, social life, be a whole person. Mentors are key. Network is key. Keep relationships genuine, stay to your genuine self. And even like, it looks like I've done a lot. I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up still. Like when you ask me 10 years from now, that picture is still fuzzy and I haven't really settled down on that. It's just a constant iteration. And I hope everyone kind of takes that view about their career too.
Yeah, beautiful. Tunde, who do we got? Give us a quick introduction.
This is Titus. I don't know if you could hear him screaming, but he was screaming out there. And joining Zoom calls actually calms him down. I don't know why. But hey.
All right. Hey Titus, good to
He
see
wants to be
you.
seen.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and do like a quick group selfie here. So folks who are not on video, take a couple seconds to come off, and let's see if we can pull off a selfie to end our time here. Let me see. All right. All right, so here we go. In 5, in 4, in 3, and 2, and in 1. Here we go. All right, I got it. I'll send it out, put it in the Slack. Thank you so much. Y'all use the reactions you've got there in Zoom. Throw your favorite amount of cheer and hearts and all of this for Tunde and for Sujude. We thank y'all for your time. And yeah, I just want to probably go through 1 or 2 more slides, but at this point, I'll cut off the recording and say thank you to everybody for listening and for chatting here. And
if you want to chat with me after, you can reach out. I can put my email here.
yeah, throw it in the chat. And I'm sure same for Tunde if you want to find them on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Follow, send contact, or Brandon, I think you can send out the email if you're interested in healthcare or VC or whatever. Feel free.
Yeah, whatever is interesting.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Well, y'all can stay or drop, but I'm gonna, for the students that are on, I'm gonna go through a couple more slides here, and then we'll get you guys out of here in like 3 or 4 minutes here. So here we go. Let me pause the recording and